Hey guys, welcome to Desk Jockey Physio, where we help active desk folks feel and move better. My name is Mitch Starkman. I'm an FCAMP registered physiotherapist and sports medicine clinic owner here in Toronto. Thanks for stopping by. All right, welcome to part 2 of snapping hip. Now, we put up this video about 2 years ago and had a lot of good feedback, a lot of questions, and so we thought we'd revisit this today and offer a little bit more help. Now, I wanted to answer the top questions that we get, and number one, most definitely, is how does this work from an anatomy standpoint? So we're going to go over that. Number two is we've also created a phased online program to tackle this issue, because the first video we have gives you some ideas of how to work on that. I hope that helps. If you need a little bit more, we have two options for you. Number one is we do offer virtual care online. You can check that out at deskjockeyphysio.com/online. Alternatively, we have this program we've created just for this at a really inexpensive cost. So that's deskjockeyphysio.com/snappinghip. We'll put those links below. So let's dive into it. So the anatomy of this issue for snapping hip is we've got this hip flexor that runs from the front of the spine to the front of the hip. So what that means is most people think the hip flexor is just in the hip, but it's not, and that's why the snapping can occur. So if I have my spine here, and I go ahead and take my hip flexor and attach it, like this, and I hold that in place, what we actually see happening here is we've got our spine in place here and the hip flexor coming down and attaching onto the front of the hip. Now, what that means is if I go ahead and lift my hip up and down, when I pull this muscle, my hip will come up. We can all see that, right? But what we often forget is if my hip comes back behind me and that muscle is too tight, it is nowhere to go. But I'm going to find a way to get my hip behind me. So I'm either going to loosen it from the back, like this, or most commonly, it's going to make its way and snap over this bone, your pelvic bone in the front, and come back this way. So it will come up like this, or alternatively, like I said, it will snap. So boom, boom. This is something that commonly will irritate people during core activities. If you're laying on your back or lifting your legs back and forth, or even in running, sometimes it will snap back and forth. The fix most people think is to stretch the hip flexor. That's only part of it. And the reason why is oftentimes the culprit to this in the first place, the hip flexor is sort of the symptom. The culprit is a strength issue. So for example, if the muscles in the back of my hip are weak and I'm trying to push or extend myself forward, my hip flexor is going to take on a role of doing more work. Same thing with my lower back core and control. If my lower back core control isn't very good, my hip flexor that runs from my back to my front of my hip is going to work to try to stabilize that area. But it is not meant to do that, nor is it efficient at that. And that can create problems. So just to kind of summarize all of this, we have this hip flexor muscle that uniquely attaches in the back of the spine, or the front of the spine, runs through the abdominal cavity into the front of the hip. What that means is if there is tightness or stiffness on that chain, it will snap or flip over top of either another muscle inside, it can snap back and forth, or over the bone. The fix for that is, yes, to loosen that muscle, but more importantly, to get at what is the cause. And if that cause is hip weakness, straighten the hip. If that cause is a core deficit, straighten the core and stretch the hip flexor. So these things become important in figuring out what the root cause is. In the program we've tackled all of those, so I hope that helps. And again, if you need a little bit more, we do offer the one-to-one as well. But this is where I would like to go and kind of give you guys those tips. So if that's helpful, please enjoy. You can always like or comment below, share this video. We appreciate that. Also, of course, be sure to subscribe. And if you do have any questions, let us know. Move like you mean it. Thanks a lot.